In 1966, a book was published about catastrophic pole shifts that end civilizations every few thousand years. The CIA classified it before most people could read it. In 2013, 47 years later, they released 57 pages of the original 284, and those 57 pages, in the CIA's own words, had been sanitized. Now, I want to be honest with you up front. The man who wrote this book, Chan Thomas, was a complicated figure. He also claimed to have ESP. He said he was in psychic contact with extraterrestrials. His own colleagues at McDonnell Douglas said some of his claims were difficult to accept. So why are we talking about him? Because none of that explains why the CIA classified a book about geology, and nobody has ever answered that question. Chan Thomas, full name Chauncey Powers Thomas, was born in 1920. He earned degrees from Dartmouth and Columbia. In the 1950s, he worked as a project engineer on Bell Aircraft's Rascal missile guidance system, one of the most classified early Cold War defense programs in existence. He then moved to Douglas Aircraft, where he worked on the A-4D Skyhawk, a carrier-based attack jet still in service decades later. These are not the credentials of a crank. These are the credentials of someone the United States government trusted with classified defense technology during the most sensitive period of the Cold War. In the late 1960s, he was recruited to McDonnell Douglas, one of the largest defense contractors in America, to join what was called the Advanced Concepts Team. The team's director later described Thomas as having a tremendously innovative mind and being a total out-of-the-box thinker. The book he wrote, the one the CIA classified, was dedicated to General Curtis LeMay, one of the most powerful military figures in American history, and to Admiral Rufus Taylor, a senior CIA officer. You don't dedicate a fringe science book to the CIA, not unless you have a relationship with them. The Adam and Eve story makes one central argument. Earth's crust, approximately 60 miles thick, sits on a thin, molten layer. Under normal conditions, planetary rotation keeps everything stable. But Thomas argued that when Earth's magnetic and electrical balance is disrupted, the crust can slide on that molten layer, shifting position rapidly. When that happens, the oceans follow, the atmosphere follows, and the civilization living on the surface at the time does not survive. Thomas placed the most recent event approximately 6,500 years ago. He connected it to the biblical flood of Noah. He placed a prior event at 11,500 years ago and connected it to what he called the story of Adam and Eve, a civilization that preceded ours, destroyed and forgotten. Now, mainstream geologists reject this. The scientific consensus is that full geomagnetic reversals happen over thousands of years, not overnight, and that crustal displacement of the kind Thomas described is not supported by current evidence. We're not here to tell you Thomas was right. We're here to ask why the CIA classified it. Question 1. Why does the CIA classify books about geology? The CIA is an intelligence agency. Its mandate is foreign intelligence, counterintelligence, and covert action. It has no geological mandate. It has no mandate to classify private citizens' scientific theories. The official explanation for the classification has never been given. The CIA's own FOIA response simply confirmed the document existed and that portions had been released. No reason, no justification, no explanation for why an intelligence agency spent 47 years sitting on a book about Earth's crust. If the book was simply wrong, you ignore it. You don't classify it. Question 2. What does sanitized mean? When the CIA released 57 pages in 2013, they used a specific word to describe what they had done to those pages. Sanitized, meaning even within the 57 pages you can read, there are things you cannot see. A fringe theory about geology does not get sanitized. It gets ignored, or it gets filed. It does not get the kind of careful, deliberate editorial treatment implied by the word sanitized. What was in those pages that required removing? Question 3. What did Thomas know from his classified work? Thomas spent years working on some of the most sensitive defense programs in Cold War America: missile guidance systems, advanced aerospace projects, classified research at one of America's largest defense contractors. The CIA's concern, according to one theory that has never been confirmed or denied, was not that Thomas's geology was dangerous. It was that Thomas's geology might have revealed something he learned during his classified work, something about what the US government knew about Earth's geomagnetic state, its trajectory, and what that might mean. That theory has never been confirmed, but it has also never been addressed. Question 4. What is in the other 227 pages? 284 pages in the original manuscript, 57 pages released, 227 pages still classified. As of today, in 2026, 60 years after this book was written, the United States government is still sitting on 227 pages of a book about geological theory written by a private citizen. The justification for continued classification has never been publicly stated. A fringe theory, still classified 60 years later. That is either the most bureaucratic overreaction in CIA history, or there is something in those 227 pages that someone does not want you to read. Here is what makes the Chan Thomas story more than just a strange Cold War footnote. In our last investigation, we covered Earth's magnetic North Pole, which has moved more than 2,300 kilometers since 1990, and crossed into the Russian hemisphere in January 2026. Thomas's central argument was that geomagnetic disruption is the trigger for catastrophic Earth changes. He wrote about magnetic field weakening as the first stage of the process he described. He was writing in 1966. We are not saying Thomas predicted our current situation accurately. We are saying that the geomagnetic data points he used as the foundation of his argument are moving in the direction he said they would move. That is worth noting, even if everything else he wrote turns out to be wrong. Thomas spent significant portions of the book examining global flood myths. And this is where, regardless of your view of his geology, he raises a question that mainstream archaeology has never fully answered. 40 independent civilizations have a flood myth. The Abrahamic traditions have Noah, the Sumerians have Gilgamesh, the Mayans have the Houdan flood, ancient Hawaiians have the story of Nu, indigenous cultures across North and South America, Pacific Islanders, Europeans, Asians, all of them describing the same event. One myth is folklore, 2 myths is coincidence, 40 myths from cultures that had no contact with each other. That starts to look less like mythology and more like memory. Thomas placed the most recent global flood at 6,500 years ago. In 1966, there was almost no archaeological evidence for this. Thomas's timing dismissed as speculation in 1966, is looking less obviously wrong in 2026. We are not saying he was right. We are saying the question deserves more than dismissal. So here is where we land on Chan Thomas and the Adam and Eve story. The geology is contested, the timeline is unverified. The man himself was a complicated figure who mixed legitimate aerospace credentials with claims that mainstream science does not support. We acknowledge all of that, but here is what remains unexplained. A private citizen writes a book about geological theory in 1966. The CIA, an intelligence agency with no geological mandate, classifies it immediately. 47 years pass. In 2013, they release 57 sanitized pages of a 284-page manuscript. In 2026, 60 years after the book was written, 227 pages remain classified. The official reason for the original classification has never been given. The official reason for the continued classification has never been given. The official explanation for what was removed during sanitization has never been given. If Chan Thomas was simply wrong about everything, this is the most elaborately maintained overreaction in the history of American bureaucracy. If he wasn't simply wrong about everything, then we have a different question. What is in those 227 pages? And why, 60 years later, does someone still not want you to read them? If you think these questions deserve answers, subscribe. We are building something here, one investigation at a time. Tell us in the comments, do you think the CIA classification of the Adam and Eve story was bureaucratic routine or something else? Because here is the thing. We can argue about Chan Thomas's geology all day, but we cannot argue about one simple fact. A private citizen wrote a book. The CIA classified it. 60 years later, most of it is still classified. That fact does not require Chan Thomas to be right about anything. It only requires someone in the CIA to have thought he was. F the narrative. Episode 2 is complete. See you next week.